Ms. Johnson, I see you in there with a skeleton in your closet behind you.
I did. I thought about my background a little bit.
Well, Nicole starts anatomy Thursday, so I guess hey, Nicole, look.
Is it in person?
Yes, it's kind of a blended right now.
Okay.
She's actually seeing patients and along with learning the clinical aspects of communicating as a doctor.
Yeah.
Okay, looks like it's 6 o'clock. For those of you who would like to join the Board of Education, a moment of prayer before we get started, please do so at this time. Dear gracious and Heavenly Father, we ask for your wisdom and your guidance as we conduct business of Stokes County. We realize these are unprecedented times and decisions are tough to make. We just ask for your guidance and your wisdom as we go forward. Which in your name we pray. Amen. All right, at this time, I'll call the meeting to order. Dr. Rice, you have probably the best microphone. Can you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Yes, sir. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great, thanks. Welcome to everybody. As we said, it's untrying times, so we're getting really good at being virtually here. At this moment, I'll poll the board for an approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Cheryl Knight, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
Thank you, Ms. Knight. Do I have a second?
Katie Tedder, second.
Thank you, Ms. Tedder. Ms. Knight, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Messick, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Tedder, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous. Public comments, Ms. Bolajak or Mr. Johnson, do we have anybody virtually wanting to speak?
Yes, I've given the information to Mr. Johnson for Miss Ashley Johnson to speak.
Okay. All right.
My turn.
I'm assuming so. It's a 3-minute time. I'll just give you the brief. There's a 3-minute time limit. Certain things can't be discussed. So personnel matters, we may or may not. Let me read this statement so that we do this legally. The agenda for regular monthly meetings will include a time period for citizens to address the Board of Education through public comment. Prior to each meeting, a form will be available for any individual or group to indicate a desire to address the Board of Education and the topic to be addressed. A 3-minute time limit will apply to each speaker. Groups are to select one spokesperson to address the Board of Education on the group's behalf. Members of the Board of Education will not respond to individuals who address the Board of Education, except to request clarification if needed. Only in cases of emergency will information received during this presentation be acted upon at this time. Grievances, complaints, or concerns related to individual school personnel or students will not be heard at this forum. Other channels have been established for the consideration and disposition of a grievance, complaint, or concern that involves school personnel or students. The superintendent will discuss with and make available to any individual or group the policies and procedures of this purpose. At this point, we'll acknowledge if Ms. Johnson would like to address the board. Please do so when you're ready.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rogers. Good evening, Stokes County Board of Education. I'm Ashley Johnson, a science teacher at South Stokes High School, just finishing my 16th year as a SARA. I'm also a parent of a current South Stokes sophomore, and while I really like being a SARA, my daughter loves it. I want to say thank you to the school board for making difficult decisions under very strange conditions. I'm speaking today of concerns about the safety of opening our schools in the midst of a growing nationwide pandemic. As of today, 198 people were diagnosed with COVID in Stokes County, and 1,820 new cases were reported yesterday for North Carolina. As of June 14th, the CDC predicts that the numbers of US cases will continue to rise if simple steps aren't taken to slow community transmission. We are being smart in Stokes County, starting schools with Plan C, and hopefully our COVID numbers will improve so we can safely move into Plan B or A. I truly believe Governor Cooper, Dr. Rice, and Mrs. Cheek at South Stokes will provide leadership to open schools safely as possible. We can ease our way back into school with Plan C, but we should not enter Plan B unless we can do it safely, and our kids need Plan B or A. I want to be in the classroom. I want my students to be in the classroom and in sports and socializing. However, we will not be able to get back to normal if we ignore how COVID spreads. I'm very worried that we do not have the personnel or funding to return to in-person schooling safety. I'm worried about how a substitute teacher will accomplish my remote instruction if I'm sick or if I'm caring for a sick family member. I'm worried about how I can provide high quality instruction for all of my students if I don't have the technology and online tools to assist in that. I'm worried that I cannot be monitoring student distance and mask wearing between classes while also cleaning my desks, surfaces, and classroom equipment before my class. I'm worried about the safety of office staff interacting with hundreds of parents and students every day. Public schools really have been asked to do far too much with far too little for too long. Now is the time when we really need funding. So I'm asking you to join me in supporting and promoting a North Carolina Association of Educators sponsored petition that I emailed to you last week. In the petition, we state that we ask that the North Carolina General Assembly must maintain at least 2019 to 2020 levels of funding and staffing for the 2020-2021 school year. Number two, that the North Carolina General Assembly must fully fund the requirements of reopening of schools determined by the State Department of Health and Human Services as specified in the Strong Schools and Public Health Toolkit. And number three, that the NCGA must direct appropriate decision-making bodies to meet with public school employees convened by the NCAE for the purpose of co-creating conditions of reentry that respect the concerns of our students, family, and staff. Again, this was emailed to board members towards the end of last week, and I thank you for your time and your attention.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson. And Ms. Bolajak, do we have anybody else wishing to present to the board?
I have not been notified of anyone. We have several people in attendance here that I don't know if we want to ask if someone else has public comments or not.
Yeah. If they've taken the time to come, I'll more than happily allow them the opportunity. Do we have anybody else on that would like to present or make a statement to the board? Okay. Well, with that being said, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Approval of electronic work session minutes for July 6th. Approval of fundraising request over $2,500. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
I'm Pat Messick, and I'll make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Do I have a second?
Mr. Rogers, I'm sorry, I couldn't unmute my phone. I actually wanted to ask for a minor edit. Since I didn't get it to Pam sooner, I wanted to mention if I can do so at this time.
Mention a modification to the work session minutes or the fundraiser?
The minutes.
Okay.
And it's just on the top of page 4 where I made the motion. I feel like my motion also included where it says with the first responder firefighter position to be advertised and the funds to be moved at a later date. I was going to say, comma, upon revisiting the funding with the county commissioners in October. I felt like I was clear, with that motion and wanting to revisit the funding with the county before, moving the dollars. That's why I made the motion the way I did. I just didn't feel like it was kind of reflected there if it needs to be.
Okay.
So it's adding maybe 9 or 10 words there. Just saying, upon revisiting the funding with the county commissioners in October.
Okay. Well, with that being said, Ms. Messick, would you still like to make your motion with that addendum?
Well, did you say that, Miss Knight, and didn't Mrs. Bojack maybe inadvertently left it off, or what?
Yes, ma'am. I did say, upon revisiting the budget or the county budget, yes, ma'am. And again, I know our minutes are not word for word, but I just wanted to be sure that was clear. That's all.
And Pat, that is the way she worded it. She wanted to review it in October prior to spending any money.
Oh, okay. So I'll just make a motion to approve the consent agenda with the item amended.
Okay. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Cheryl Knight.
Okay, Ms. Knight, how do you vote? Ms. Messick, how do you vote? Ms. Tedder, how do you vote?
Aye.
That's 4, Pam. All right, discussion of the agenda. Discussion of relaunch 2020. Woohoo!
Board, as we made the announcement last week, we have put out a plan for relaunching school this fall. We have chosen to ease into it for several reasons, primarily having to do with training staff, and didn't feel like just in the 5 work days we could accomplish all the normal things that we needed to do and do all the extra trainings for cleaning, screenings, and so forth. We're also, some of the equipment that we're getting in is not supposed to get in until the first week of August, which, and that's if everything goes on schedule. I would hate for that to be, a week late and put us even more behind the 8 ball. So we just wanted to give ourselves some extra time to do those things, to open school as safe as possible for our students. So we made that decision to have our open houses more on an individual basis the first week of school, then go to Plan C, all virtual for 2 weeks. That would give us the chance to, again, get that plan back out there and do the trainings we need, make sure we have all the materials that we need at the time to start school. And then we would bring our students back in that, as Governor Cooper has allowed, Plan B, which is 50% of our students in any given space, in any given building, with working on that 6 feet social distancing, the face mask, the precautions that they have in place. I will tell you that we have received some questions from teachers, the Stokes County Education Association, some individual teachers, some parents on social media, as well as some emails and phone calls. We are working to put together a frequently asked questions document to answer some of those questions. Hopefully that will be out in the next day or 2. There will be a few of those items that will be incomplete at that time. I talked to Mr. Johnson on Friday about an issue, and he said that he is going to be attending a school law symposium conference, if you will, virtually, I believe later this week, and some of the answers will come then. DPI is sending out clarifying documents, frequently asked question documents on several of the items. So a few of the items we will say we don't have the answers to yet, but we're still working to get them. But a lot of the answers we can get out there. One of the big ones that people have asked, and I'll just let you know, if we've made the option available for Plan C for our students to have 100% virtual instruction. And one of the common questions is, how long of a commitment is that? Have parents, if they sign that or sign up for that, is that for an entire school year, half a year, 9 weeks? And our answer to that is we would like for people to commit to at least 9 weeks, but also we're going to look at those as individual situations. If a student is struggling in that scenario, or if something were to happen and the governor were to go back to Plan A, and people would rather do that than, if people in their mind would rather be A, then C, and then finally in a B model, we understand that. And we would work with people. Again, we would ask that they commit to 9 weeks, but that's not a contract. We want to serve our students. And if one is not working out well in that situation, we would certainly work with them. The same in the other way. If somebody says we want plan B, but after the first 2 weeks of school, they say, man, we really like how this is going now. We're not crazy about the plan B. Can we switch? We would certainly look at allowing them to do that as well. So that seemed to be the biggest question that people had that I wanted to answer quickly. I'm going to kind of turn it over to Mr. Rose and the academic team, if you will, to kind of talk some more into it. And again, this is going to be a group effort tonight as we talk about Relaunch 2020. But Mr. Rose, I'll turn it over to you now.
All right. Hopefully everybody is seeing my screen at this point.
Mr. Rose, I'm not.
You are not. Okay. Just a moment. Hold just a moment, Dr. Rice. I am sorry about that. If I need to, I can go from the document that I've passed out to the board members as well, if need be. All right. Dr. Rice, I will just do that so we don't have to take time for the pulling up that presentation. I can certainly talk through what I've got from the documents that the board has. And then also, from the documents that they have with them. Board members, I will let you know that the state did have a required remote instructional plan that we were to look through and turn in with 15 components. And I'm going to talk through those 15 components prior to moving into the 3 plans that I shared in the documents with you, just so you kind of know what the state was looking for. The very first component was that we were to consult our stakeholders, which we have done through surveys. We have maintained leadership team meetings to talk through the components and share the guidance as it has come out from the Department of Health and Human Services and our government agencies. The second component was educator training for remote instruction. We have put together several staff development opportunities to refine our practice and help us to improve as we move through this. The third component is to communicate the roles and expectations. That's where we'll get into the work days and some of the additional responsibilities that will come throughout this remote learning. The fourth component was surveying for connectivity, which we have done, and that is one that it states we are to continue to do to monitor the connectivity for our students. The fifth one was working with community partners, which, as you know, we have discussed with our Y and other community partners throughout in regards to some childcare options and also increasing connectivity opportunities for our students. The sixth component was development of design and delivery within our PLCs. This is where we will look at our remote learning and building in some staff development opportunities and our principals being able to choose which components our teachers want to look at as we go through with that. Teaching and practicing with learning and the management system. You're going to hear me talk a lot tonight about a learning management system. Each one of our plans will work through those learning management systems. Number 8, learning target communication and monitoring of instruction. This is how our principals will use observations and walkthroughs and how we will align to the North Carolina essential standards. Number 9, we are to ensure that remote instruction supports mastery. That's where we're going to take a real close look at our pacing to make sure that we are staying on track. Number 10, discusses the EC access to remote learning. So we're going to look there at how we are helping our students to be successful. Number 11 refers to how we track attendance when we're in remote learning. And number 12 refers to online and offline contact options. We did submit a spreadsheet that has all of those components for both online and offline learning. Number 13, we're to establish technology support. That is something that Ms. Barker has worked hard on, and we do have our media folks available to assist and to answer questions. And we're going to set up some communication options and help tickets for our parents as well. Number 14 will be our supports for our English language learners, AIG, and our students who fall under the McKinney-Vento Act. And number 15, our limitations in Stokes County for implementing quality remote learning. So we're going to be examining what things may hold us back as we are moving forward and problem solve through that. All right, so we had to plan all of this within 3 scenarios. And when we're discussing this, we want to make sure that we are able to flow from one plan to the other as seamlessly as possible. So I want to talk through these 3 plans some with you, with plan A being students being in our building full time with our extra cleaning and sanitation protocols. Plan B, 50% in-building attendance, which is what the governor has approved. And then plan C, full remote learning. We do have certain criteria that's going to apply for all of these scenarios. First of all, within all of these scenarios, all of our teachers will implement a learning management system. The 2 systems that we have are within Google Classroom or a Canvas course. Our teachers are going to communicate, well, as schools, we're going to communicate the learning format, the expectations, and the methods that our families will need to use. And we're going to go over this during an expanded open house, which we can certainly talk about more later, and then use our phone messaging system and email system. And all of our students will have Chromebooks and devices, and they will practice working within the learning management system under all of the plans above. So let me go into some of the details of Plan A, and this is when we have all of our students within the building. During those times, we will continue to really live in that learning management system with our Google Classrooms or our Canvas courses, so that our students are having those systems modeled to them. We're going to continue to communicate the learning targets or the objectives that we're going to be covering within the essential standards. And we are going to use this platform to house all the activities that our students will participate in the day with their assignments and instructional resources. Students are going to engage in the system daily, and we're going to focus on building the students' comfort level in that learning management system when we're in Plan A. And we're going to use the instructional tools frequently so that when we move to Plan B and Plan C, they are familiar with those instructional tools as well. Plan B, which is a hybrid model. Board members, I have shared the scheduling there with you for our AD, A, and B day rotations. Again, within this hybrid model, we're going to live in the learning management system. We're going to communicate the learning targets carefully, and we will use this platform to house all of the learning materials just as we had done in Plan A. One of the biggest complaints that we had was in the amount of instruction with face-to-face instruction that our parents and teachers were receiving, that our parents and our students were receiving. So we're going to use Google Meet daily, and then at the secondary level by class period. And the pacing is going to continue to cover the full content. So when I say that, even though we are on a 2 or 3 day rotation between A and B, new instruction will be taking place daily so that we continue to move and cover the full curriculum so our students can be successful. We're going to communicate the expectations to students and families in weekly increments so that they see what we're covering for the full week, and so that we can help our families to more effectively plan that instruction for the students and opportunities to help them out. We're going to schedule Google Meets for real-time standard-based instruction for all of our new content so that our students who are on remote and our students who are sitting in front of the teacher both have the opportunity to participate in instruction. Those Google Meets will be recorded and added into the learning management system so that they can view those later for the folks who were unable to attend. And we're going to include our related service personnel. So our EC folks are going to help in planning for the modifications and the differentiation that takes place for our AIG students as well. And we do want to make sure that we're using familiar resources that students recognize. And then we want to vet that content. I know I had heard that students were learning from programs and that maybe they were not as familiar with the things that were coming over through that program. So we'll make sure that we vet that resource so that it is covering the classroom content at the level that it needs to and make sure that it's effective. And also, again, any new content will be taught by the teacher during these Google Meet times. And we're going to monitor the pacing and content through observations and walkthroughs of our Google Meets within the learning management system. Plan C, when we move to full remote instruction. Y'all, I know I'm repeating on this, but I think it's important for continuity that we continue to live in this learning management system in every plan that we run. We continue to communicate the learning targets of what we're going to cover. And within this, we use Google Meet daily or by class period so that our students have interaction with each other and the teacher daily. Our pacing has to continue to cover the full content. And we need to make sure that we are communicating again by the full week so that our students and our families can plan more effectively on how to support student learning. We will continue to schedule Google Meet times for the standard-based instruction, and we are going to embed the links for those and also record those meetings within our learning management system. And in all of the phases, we are going to include our related service personnel and planning for the modifications and the differentiation of instruction. We will continue to use familiar resources that have been vetted by the teacher so that we know that it's covering the content as it needs to, and we'll observe and do walkthroughs to make sure that our instructional practices are in line throughout our buildings and that we're holding some common expectations for instruction. So again, when I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about transitioning between these three plans, and I'm thinking about the essential components for us to be successful and maintain this consistency, we do have to stay in that learning management system for every single plan. That way our students are familiar with it and they are seeing all of the resources in sort of a one-stop shop. We're going to have to maintain our pacing no matter what phase that we are in so that our students are exposed to the entire content. And again, the biggest thing that I saw from the surveys was that we were not having the Google meetings as often as the parents would have liked, and they wanted more direct instruction from our teachers. So we want that daily interaction with our students, and Google Meet will be our tool to do that. And anytime that we are going to be covering new content, it needs to be taught by our teachers with that direct time through Google Meet or the recording, and not by a program. So I know I have moved rather quickly through that in talking about the three phases. I think that if we can keep that seamless, we're going to be much more successful. And I think we do have the tools to make that happen. With attendance, when we first talked about this, we sort of listed out a lot of different ways that students would be able to show that they were being successful in keeping up with the instruction and maintaining contact. And you can see the list here with Google meeting attendance, work completion, the number of times maybe they have logged in to the platform, how they have done their assignments and submitted those, if they have come to office hours to get some help from the teacher, or any other form of communication that may have been established to show active participation, such as an email stating I have been in and I've done this assignment. I did receive an email on July 14th that we were going to receive more direction in terms of attendance in the near future. So right now, this is just a a possible list of things that we could use, but we'll have to wait for a more direct response from DPI. All right, so board members, I know that I've moved rather fast. Do you have questions for me at this time?
Ms. Knight?
Mr. Rose, thank you. I know that's been a lot of consuming all of your time lately, and I thank you and Ms. McGee both for that thorough presentation. I will ask, how will special education services be provided when those students are on a remote day, or what would something like that look like? Or would it be more therapies and one-on-one time on the days they are at school? Do you have some of that sort of?
I do. I know that the IEP, is certainly going to dictate what practices that we are doing. But as far as the methods we'll use to deliver that additional instruction, I'll let Ms. Collins address that at this time.
Yes, so we are going to be asking that all EC students are going to have an individual contingency plan. And that plan is going to be created at an IEP meeting with parents and teachers present, an LEA representative, and it's going to be created to document the services and accommodations and what they would look like in those plans. So those plans may look different for different students, but we will continue to serve our students in various ways. We're going to have constant conversation and communication with parents, and then have their input and involvement in the creation of these, what we call individual contingency plans.
So there will be maybe therapies or communications from teachers during the day with
Yes, and
groups of students. Okay.
yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah.
Mr. Rose, at one point you mentioned community partners and like the YMCA and things like that, I guess to help maybe parents with children and things on the days they're not in school. Do you right off have any community partners in northern Stokes County?
We are still trying to communicate to various partners who may be able to offer support in areas throughout the county. At this time in northern Stokes County, I don't have any at this time, but we certainly will be reaching out to several. And I would be open to any suggestions that you might have, after the meeting, if you have any recommendations folks for me to speak with.
Yes, sir. I could recommend, some options, maybe. It doesn't hurt to ask for sure. Because I know that's, we've discussed that before, an ongoing kind of issue there. I just have a lot of concerns for, working parents and just situations. I know you mentioned attendance, and I know you said that Mr. Johnson will have more answers for us going forward. But, will it be okay for a student to go back and watch a lesson, maybe a student's at a home where they don't have internet access, would they be able to watch a lesson, later in the evening, not during school hours, and then, turn in work kind of like before? Or will that be like an attendance issue against them if they're not able to link up with a teacher while she's in a daytime class,
Right. So, we have several different things that, we have recommended that we would like to use. We're just waiting for further information, actually from the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, to move forward in that. We will have our Google Meet times recorded and placed in that learning platform so that students are able to participate after the meeting. We would love for them to be able to participate at the same time as their other classmates to help increase that socialization. But if they're unable to, they will still be able to get the recorded instruction from their teacher.
Okay, that's all I have at this time. I may have a few more questions later. Thank you, Mr. Rose.
Thank you, Ms. Knight.
Okay, Ms. Messick.
Good evening, Mr. Rose.
Hey, Ms.
I really applaud you for all the work you have done. Could you name over the people on your team that helped come up with all these great plans?
So definitely Miss McGee. I'm scared that I will leave folks out, to be honest with you, but Terry Collins, Karen Barker. We've had communication with all of our principals, assistant principals. All of our directors have sat through these conversations, Dr. Taylor, Dr. Rice, obviously all the parents with their survey information that we were able to send out to the schools. And then I have lined up some focus groups to refine this and get further concerns for this Thursday with both parents and teachers to refine this down and make it more manageable.
Okay, well, you must have had a big meeting when you had all those folks attended.
Well, we've broken it down. You know how it is. If you have an extremely large group, sometimes it's harder to get that personalization and get the information from the folks. We have had meetings that involve all principals and directors at the same time, but we are wanting to get some smaller focus groups to work through this as well.
Okay, so all the principals were able to put their input in at some time or other.
We have been talking every single Wednesday, going over these components throughout the summer.
That's commendable. I wanted to ask you if the Y is going to be able to have that before and after school service for parents that will have students home, but maybe they're working.
I have been on sort of a long email chain that is going through with lots of different districts and the YMCA to iron out some details. I hate to speak for the Y, but they certainly will be involved in our plans, and we'll see, you know, to what extent they are able to serve the families in this area.
Well, is it possible that they may be at the schools like they were in past years, where parents could maybe use their services?
I think that probably depends tremendously on the phase, you know, that we are in. Within, I think we'll have to look at the participation at phase B in particular.
Okay, but as we move forward, surely we will go into different phases, and you feel like that may be a possibility for parents when we, did you say move into phase B or move out of phase B?
Well, you know, they have the after school care, and within A, we have every student in the building. Within B, we're at 50%. So, you know, again, I hope that we can certainly partner with the Y and get some, you know, continuum of care for the families.
Mm-hmm.
But I will involve them in those conversations to see what we can offer.
Well, that'd be great, because and so you're going to be working on that too, to see if we can assist families on these A day, B days. I'm thinking especially for the elementary children, because I think it'll be a hardship more on those parents with their children coming Tuesday, Thursday, or Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you know, alternating weeks.
Right. Yeah, it's going to be an issue. You know, and we know that with these forms of remote learning and the students being out of our building with
Right.
this today.
And honestly, you know, if everybody really thinks about it, and I know people really have, it is impossible to teach children to learn to read remotely. I mean, it's not impossible, I guess. Nothing's impossible, but it's more difficult. So we just about have to bring them in, you know, as best we can. And then I do think that that's a great thing you said, that the teachers will be teaching the lessons instead of a program. So I'm glad you put that in there.
Well, we can use, the programs are great for practice, but as far as the new content, the one example that comes to mind is Khan Academy with the lessons that they offer. It's good quality material.
Right.
At the same time, I think the direct instruction of a teacher, it is so very valuable to help these students to learn. And Ms. Messick, with what you were mentioning about teaching a child to read and remote instruction, I think now more than ever, our partnership with our families is going to be more critical than it has ever been. I myself have a kindergartner this year, and I'm going to take the instructions that the teacher gives me, and we're going to do our best to help her with all those materials at home. So I think now, we're going to look at certainly serving all of our children, but how do we partner with these families and help them to build on the instruction that's taking place in these platforms, the learning management system.
Right. We're all going to have to work together.
Absolutely.
Yes. Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Rose.
you.
Okay, anything else, Pat?
No, that's all at this time. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Tedder.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rose, for that presentation, and all of central office staff for your hard work and the hours you have put into this impossible task. I just want to make sure that I heard right. Ms. Messick asked the same question I had, Mr. Rose, about the COVID team, if you will. So you listed several people on the team, but those appear to be just all central office staff. Did we not have any teachers or staff or particular parents on this committee? Has there been a dedicated COVID focus group or task force, if you will?
So in this first portion, what we have done is, of course, we got the information within surveys that we had shared. We had our remote learning feedback at the end of the year. We have involved our principals throughout. And then, like I said, this week on Thursday, I will be having focus groups, one for elementary and one for secondary, where we have invited in a small group of teachers and parents. And we're going to look at this and refine it that much more. So we have gotten feedback as far as an actual group that consists of multiple members. We have split those groups out more by area.
But nothing to date yet.
Correct.
Okay.
Last week we did have, I'm sorry, last week we did have a focus group about moving into Plan C before moving into Plan B with teachers, school nurse. We had elementary, middle, and high school teachers in a smaller group setting. 3 administrators as well, representing elementary, middle, and high school. We had about 12 people on that call to get their input as well. A couple of those were parents, so it affected them in different ways as well. But we did have that group last week specifically about whether or not we needed to transition, what they felt the training overload was, and that. So yes, ma'am, we have had that.
Okay. That was just to talk about how to go from C to B, though? Is what you...
About the need for starting, about the need or not having the need to go to a Plan C or just start directly in B with the training requirements, the screening requirements, to get their input on that. Received some very valuable feedback from that group, which helped us make the decision that we did.
Okay. Thank you for that. Has there been talk about, I know other counties have, okay, Mr. Rose, I understand about the survey, but that was early on in this, and there's been a lot of data, and the numbers just keep going up since then. I know other counties have taken a survey of their teachers and staff very recently about their intent or their concern about coming back to school regardless of the plan. Do we plan on sending out a secondary survey or form asking them of their opinion on that? And I ask that because I know other counties are putting out a form for their staff and employees and having them take it if they are an at-risk person, having their physicians sign off on that, stating that they are an at-risk. What they're going to do with this information, I don't know, but are we considering such a form or request from teachers and staff?
Ms. Jessup and I have been discussing that. Again, some of the questions that we don't have answered yet from the state level is, what would we do with that? Is there an option or not? Is there leave codes or not? Is what would the options be? And we have not surveyed the staff because, again, until we know what their options are, we don't know if there's a need for a survey. And so we're still trying to get guidance from that to figure out what to put on a survey, if you will. I know some others have asked about, are you comfortable coming back to work? Do you plan to come back to work? No one has resigned yet, so we expect people to be at work. And until we have some of these other answers set up, we just have not, we've not surveyed the staff until we found out what the purpose would be and what we could do with it.
Okay. We've got to try to figure this as soon as we can. We got to figure this out for our teachers and staff, because I'm afraid we're going to lose several. I was on a town hall meeting with the North Carolina School Board Association today, and Ms. Knight, your question about the EC services, and Ms. Collins, I'm sure you know, those were the questions they were most vague about. So those are serious concerns that I have about how we are going to serve those students, because there are many, many unanswered questions about those, especially those in self-contained classes. But we'll just look forward to getting some guidance on those. The other thing that there were more questions than answers today at that meeting. There was nothing real earth-shattering that I learned in that town hall meeting, other than they had a bullet about the governor's guidelines. And one of those guidelines, as we all know, is the 50% capacity mandate that he's put out there. But they said that bullet needed to be revised, because now, rather than saying 50%, they are saying as long as you can provide 6 feet of social distance between the students. So that could mean 50% or more, just depending on what school. And what are we using as our 50%, if that was going to still be that? I mean, are you telling teachers to measure their space, or how is this being calculated, if you will? Because I've heard some frightening things about how some other districts are doing that, such as 50% of fire code capacity. And I don't think that was the intent of the governor, but what are we looking at? Can one of you address that?
We are looking at 50% of our student population. We've looked through Power School and found out that the divider of A through K and L through Z is the closest to 50% that there is. There may be some, individual classrooms that we may have to restructure a little bit to help us with that guideline. But, our goal is, if the K-3 class size law is 21, we're looking to get pretty close to 10 and 11. It may be 9 and 12 or so, but, we're going to try to, again, work with that, and we may need to restructure a class or two to get us more in line with that. But that's our starting point. Most of our school, to be honest, the most I'm worried about is our middle school, especially Chestnut Grove. That's the one that's causing the most angst. And until we start getting our surveys back, we start our online enrollment tomorrow, and I believe the first question on that form is, do I want to choose the 100% online enrollment? That's going to help us with our numbers as well, because if people choose to opt into that, that's less that have to be divided later, which will help us in our spacing. Again, I was on that town hall today as well. The important thing is to try to keep your 6 feet spacing as much as anything. They gave statistics of the percentage of transmission at 3 feet away, and then at 6 feet away, and 6 feet with a mask is basically almost it's a very low percentage chance of transmission. And so that's what we're working to do. Mr. Goins and Dr. Taylor have been out and measured some classes to give us an idea, and we're looking at around 12 to 13 in our normal average class that we could do this with. But we may end up taking up some other spaces at times where it may be, some areas that have not been utilized in the past need to be utilized in the future. But we are, looking at those numbers, waiting and anticipating this online enrollment to give us some more numbers with that. But, our goal is to make people as safe as possible and to provide that 6 feet of distance that we've been asked to do.
That part of the presentation today was the most helpful, that slide with those statistics about the possibility of spread with the 3 feet and the 6 feet and the masks versus no masks and all that. I did appreciate that. And maybe when you send something out, or when we get the feedback from School Board Association, if you could share that with teachers and staff, that might be helpful as well.
Yes, ma'am.
I want to make it clear, though, that Doug, in your presentation, you started off with talking about Plan A, and we got to be clear here that Plan A is not an option on any table right now. So I just want to make sure that everybody understands that at this point in time, I'm afraid that was going to be leading to some confusion, that people are going to ask about that. So
thank you. Yes, according to the governor's guidance, we are allowed to start MB, but he did emphasize repeatedly that Plan C was also an option. Plan A is not available to us at this time until that is cleared by our governor.
Right. And I am pleased with how I'm very pleased with how we've picked to go back and start the first 3 weeks of school. But I'm afraid that at least the local news that I've seen since that email or that announcement was sent out, Dr. Rice, I'm afraid some news outlets are reporting it incorrectly, in that they are saying the first 2 weeks is remote learning, whereas that's not all completely true. We are doing the first week as orientation. Now, Stokes News, it did explain that the first week was orientation, but for instance, some of the news outlets on television are just saying the first 2 weeks. So I'm afraid if we don't clarify that somehow, that the first week is a orientation by appointment only, that we're going to have some students arriving at schools on August 17th, more than we can handle. So we might need to clarify that point sooner rather than later too. If y'all have seen that.
Our individual schools will be reaching out to schedule those times, which should help clear that up. Again, we have not had an administrators, well, we had a brief one today, but did not discuss it. On Wednesday, we'll be talking to them about the communication that needs to go out, about scheduling those online orientation, individual or small group orientations. And so we will over communicate that, starting 2 weeks before school starts to really get that message out clearly. But you are correct. It doesn't take much to get a wrong message out, and we hope people come to the source to get their information, and we will certainly be reaching out to them.
Okay, let me double back there to Mr. Rose. When you talked about the enrollment form that you're going to be sending out to parents, is that for parents who only want to choose C as an option, or are you expecting everybody to respond to that?
This is our normal online. We started this. Help me out, Ms. Slager. Did we do this the last 2 years now?
Yes, it's been probably the last 3 years. This will be our 4th year.
Okay, this will be our 4th year. This is a chance for parents to do the enrollment packet online instead of having that 2 hours of homework, if you will, at the start of school, where they can fill out the stuff that's automatically imported into Power School. Saves our data managers a lot of times and keeps our parents from having to, especially the parents with multiple kids, from having to rewrite the same information over and over again. So we'll be asking all of our parents to complete that. We'll be sending out communications. We had a little glitch today. Hopefully have that resolved, and we'll be sending out communications tomorrow, both on social media, phone messages, a website, asking every parent to fill that out. And again, that first question is to ask parents if they would like to opt in to 100% online learning or not. We wanted that at the start of the form.
Okay, so you're talking about the whole package that is normally in the student handbook of paperwork that used to be just paper only, but
yes,
now
ma'am.
You're calling it, okay. Okay, because that was a little confusing. I'm sorry for the confusion there. I understand now. Just a couple more things. Thank you for bearing with me. One of the most asked questions has been the child care question. And I did talk to Mr. Rose about that the other day, and I've thought about that a little bit more, well, a lot more since that conversation, and wondering if there couldn't possibly be, when we get some numbers back about interest for enrollment under the Plan C option. I have a feeling that we're going to have many opting for C. Could there be an opportunity to consider allowing the children of our teachers and staff to come to school all 5 days of the week if they choose to do that, since childcare is not an option? And I understand that this may seem unfair to other working parents. However, I think maybe we could consider it an employee benefit. Other companies have childcare options for their employees. They might have daycares at their workplaces, if you will. But could we say that it is an employee benefit and possibly do an emergency procedure for at least this year, if the numbers are low enough for us to allow that, if teachers want to have their children there all 5 days, and if we could offer that only for elementary age students, that would be a big help to many of our teachers, I think. I don't know what other board members feel about that, but that could be an emergency, if you will, procedure that you all could develop.
I'm happy to do whatever the board would like for me to do. I would want the numbers first before we made any type of promises or anything, because we need to make sure that we have the space available to serve our entire student body as is, and with the distancing requirements that we need to have before we were to look at any other options.
Ms.
Okay.
Taylor or Mr. Rogers, if I may, I mean, I've had similar concerns as far as, you know, essential jobs and working parents. If a smaller school, you know, say right off the bat, 50% of students in a classroom or in a school, you know, opted for C, would that give the opportunity for the other group that wanted more time in school? You know, would 5 days be an option? And again, maybe that's just something we can revisit also going forward once we know the amount of interest in B versus C. Are y'all following me?
Miss
I am,
Tedder?
Cheryl.
Yeah, I mean, Miss Tedder, it was your turn. You tell me.
Okay. Yeah, Ms. Knight, I think that all depends on the numbers again.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we need to get those as soon as possible. I know other districts are putting it out there to parents, you know, what are you going to do? And they're doing that with deadlines of later this week,
Mm-hmm.
what they want to do. So I think we need to get a poll out there pretty soon of parents' wishes, since we do know what our plan B is going to look like. And with my next question then is, if we go to Plan C, is there a difference? Okay, this remote learning is defined as a temporary situation, but other districts are doing these standalone virtual schools or virtual academies, and they're starting those fresh. Like Surrey County, I think, is doing the Plan D with a virtual academy, something like that. Have we considered that if we go to a Plan C with a group of teachers doing that for the year and then beyond?
Again, that the staffing issue is the problem there. If Pine Hall, for example, has 2 kids come out of their class, and 3 kids out of Lawsonville and 2 kids out of Germantown, the state does not give an extra allotment of teachers based on schools. It's over your overall ADM. And so if our ADM doesn't change, just to add teachers is not an option. They would have to come from somewhere. So if a large enough cluster were to come from somewhere at some of our larger schools, it may be something that we could consider. Our initial survey didn't show that, especially at the elementary level. And so if we get that cluster, when the enrollment starts tomorrow, then we may consider that. But just to do a standalone school, we would have to have, for a kindergarten through 12th grade would take multiple teachers, and we're not that overstaffed. So it would have to come from a big enough grouping at an individual school to make that happen.
Is that a new program for Surrey County that I read about, that they're Plan D virtual? Do you know about that?
I believe it is a new program.
I'm just wondering how they're able to do the staffing there. And, you know, we've talked about Yadkin County having a virtual academy before, and wondering how they're able to staff that too. I just think that might be worth that. That's going to have to be looked at if this continues for much longer.
I think we'll have better results knowing once we have our results from enrollment coming from Plan C. Right now, we're just making assumptions on things we don't know. So it's kind of like we're chasing the COVID rabbit down the hole at this point. So
I think we the term enrollment might be confusing to some parents. We have those annual forms, but might need to rather call it we need to do an initial intent survey possibly. Those are my suggestions or my thoughts on that. And I would like to also thank our community partners who have stepped up already, and for those who are considering helping us. This is going to take a lot of help from the community to work out whatever plan we have. And I know a lot of people are looking at the Y like it's been discussed. Particularly, I would like to thank Slate Funeral Home. They had that story on yesterday. I know they offered that last spring, but thank you to them and everyone else that's going to step in and help us out. And that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Okay. Firstly, I think until we have an idea, and Dr. Rice, you're going to send out a one call that lets them know that this is open to start looking at it, because as much as Facebook is spreading viral, it might not be a bad idea to just say, hey, we're starting. If you intend on option C moving forward, please do so now, so we have a better call. Because right now we're all making assumptions and guesses, but we don't know what's going to happen for
Yes, sir.
opening until we get hard numbers.
Yes, sir. We'll start publicizing that tomorrow.
Okay, great. Thanks. All right. Discussion of Stokes Early College High School discretionary days for 2020-2021.
Good evening, board. The information you have in front of you, I have to be completely transparent and let you know that some of this information, both from the early college and our other traditional schools, some of this was put together prior to the decision being made by the governor to put us in phase B and or phase C. So that some of the information you have in your packet is subject to change, knowing that we now have made the decision to change our start date. And so just remember that. I'd like to share that as a preface the information with that. But you do have in the packet the discretionary days that the early college has presented to district administration that we would like to share with you. But again, knowing that now that we are adjusting our start date, some of this information may have to change.
Okay, Ms. Knight, do you have any questions?
No, sir, I do not.
Ms. Messick?
No, I don't have any discussion about the discretionary days, but I did want to say this before we move too much farther, that I would like to agree with Ms. Tedder on asking Dr. Rice to look at the employee, the children that would be going to the elementary school that are employees of the school system, that if that could help them out, that they could work out an arrangement that their child could come 5 days a week because this is for, these people are essential workers. They'll have to start, and it could be a benefit to our employees. So I did want to mention that. And I do not have any questions about the discretionary days for Stokes Early College. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thank you. Ms. Tedder?
No questions about that.
All right, thank you, Dr. Taylor. Traditional schools discretionary days.
Similar thoughts regarding these days as well. Knowing, for example, we have an open house listed, but also knowing that now that we've made some changes in how we're going to be adjusting our schedule, and as Ms. Tedder said earlier, doing more of an appointment, if you will, for the open house idea or concept. So just know up front that this is what the schools have presented to us. They do meet the requirements set forth by state board policy, but also be aware that they may be subject to change, knowing that our schedule has changed somewhat, and we will communicate with the principals at our meeting on Wednesday to see what adjustments may or may not have to be made. But those are the way they are as of now.
Okay. Any questions from the board? I mean, pretty standard. Okay, moving on to bell schedule.
I would also like to preface by saying there have been some changes to the information you have in front of you. Some schools have made some changes to their schedules, but again, a lot of this work was done prior to the announcement made by the governor, which then led to us making the decision to alter our schedule. So for example, after talking with some principals on Thursday, I spent quite a bit of time out in the schools talking with principals about social distancing and marking and what could be used and couldn't be used and how we were going to address some things. One principal in particular said to me, I'm going to have to adjust when my teachers report, given the fact of all of the screening requirements and student management requirements that are going to be placed on us now. We fully understand that our report times and even maybe some of our bail times, for example, we have a couple of schools, we have a handful of schools that share buses. As we finalize our routes and make those adjustments, we are aware that those changes may impact start-stop times somewhat. So we are looking at those situations individually. But again, what you have in front of you is what the schools have presented as of today. But we will work with these with the principals and talk with them in more detail, and any additional changes will be brought to you for your information.
Okay, great. Any questions? Early dismissal.
Wait, hey, I was waiting for Ms. Knight or Ms. Messick if they had any questions. I do have questions about the bell schedule, if they didn't have any.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I fully expected there to be some changes to this, given that, and this, let me preface this by saying this is not Stokes County that I'm going to say this about. This is not Stokes County. Another county, a much, much larger county, chose Plan C because of the logistics of the screening. Their teachers were going to have to arrive at 6:30 a.m. if they were going to be able to get through all that screening. Therefore, they chose Plan C. So I'm thinking that these might have to be changed drastically, but I'm wondering how we are going to be able to fit in then when our teachers are only required 7.5 hours a day. That whole thing is logistically very confusing.
Well, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't mean to step in. Go ahead.
Go ahead. I'll wait for my next
I was
question.
just going to say, unfortunately, we are well aware that Plan B does create a lot of logistical issues and concerns. We also are aware that simply trying to get students to school, get them screened, keep them 6 feet apart, multiple bathroom breaks, getting them fed. We understand that's going to have an impact on the instructional day. We are going to be meeting with the nurses this week. We're going to take all of the information they have been receiving from their regional consultants to make sure we have all of the information, and we will begin identifying teams, if you will, or the numbers of people that we will need to carry out these screenings. Now, we are not, thankfully, as large as some districts. 2,000 high school students, you can imagine how long that screening process would take. So we're hoping it won't take as long as some schools, but it will, especially in the beginning, it will take some time. But we're going to look at this once we talk with everyone and identify the numbers of people. For example, if a student rides the bus and they are screened as they get on the bus, they will not have to be screened a second time when they arrive at school. So we will take the number of students we have overall, the number of bus riders that are pre-screened, then we will identify groups, teams, if you will, that have to screen car riders or those that drive to school. So we're working through those numbers literally as we speak.
Okay. Do you have any idea what the earliest bus arrivals traditionally have been compared to start times? And I ask this because of where I worked. I know that the bus that served as the bus to go to South Stokes for ROTC for first period, that bus arrived extremely early compared to the other buses. Do we have other buses in the district that arrive very early compared to the start bell?
I don't have that information in front of me. Mr. Langford may be able to speak to that without that information. I can tell you that we are in the process of updating our stops, and we will then begin updating our routes, and we will have more of that information at subsequent meetings. Yes, ma'am, okay. There are some buses that arrive early, but what I can tell you is that what we are envisioning, as even though we're going to be transporting fewer students per route, the time involved to transport those students is going to take more. It's going to be longer. For example, if I'm a bus driver and I'm hauling 20 young people, a regular route with 20 stops or 20 young people wouldn't be that long. But when you consider I'm now having to screen every student before they get on the bus, that's going to take additional time. It's going to be slower in the beginning. It is going to have an impact on that in the beginning.
Right.
Mr. Langford, can you speak to her question?
Well, he doesn't have to, since I know you're all looking at it. We can get the report on that at a later time. That's fine. But I did have a question about the logistics of the West Stokes students who go to South Stokes. Are we going to be transporting a group of students for ROTC or the other electives that may be offered there, like auto tech, and I think those are the only two now.
At this time, I am not aware of any programmatic changes of that nature. If those programs are still offered, then we will offer some type of transportation. We will work to address that. It may require a second bus versus one, but we will work through those situations. But right now, I'm not aware, and Mr. Rose can speak to that better than I can. But right now, we are planning to serve our students as to the best of our abilities. And if those programs are still in place, then we will work to find a solution to get them where they need to be.
Okay. I just wanted to know if that had been discussed. Thank you very much.
Okay. Any other questions about start time? Bell times, I should say, excuse me.
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, early dismissal.
Very similar concept situation. The schools have submitted these requests to you for your review and submitted those to Dr. Rice and the central office as well. These numbers, these times could be impacted depending on how far we go into the current arrangement. And we will bring these back to you as we update our schedule.
The primary reason for the early dismissal request is due on testing days. And again, as he's saying, if we're still in A day, B day, that testing window may be extended. Last spring, it was eliminated. Again, so these are all subject to change right now. We're all writing with a big eraser on our pencil.
Yeah, I mean, we're trying to juggle cats on a super highway right now, trying to keep all the balls in the air with everything changing. So, well, as soon as we get it set, I'm sure everything else will change. So,
And at that time, we will bring you updated information at that time.
okay, thanks.
You're welcome.
Discussion of the MOU with Stokes County Department of Social Services.
Board, this is the agreement between the Stokes County Board of Education and the Stokes County Department of Social Services, primarily as it relates to foster care. This is the agreement that we have in place that will allow us to partner with the social services and provide programs to our foster care students, primarily if it involves transportation, those types of activities. So that's the agreement for that. Fairly straightforward. Basically what we have done is, so you'll know, is we simply updated the dates. Mr. Johnson has worked with us in the past, helping review this and put this together. So nothing has changed other than the dates.
Okay, Ms. Knight, do you have anything?
No, sir. Thank you.
Ms. Messick?
No, not at this time. Thank you.
Ms. Tedder?
No.
Okay, discussion of school nursing services.
This is the contract between the Stokes County Health Department and the Stokes County Board of Education regarding our nurses, school nurses. And again, this has been reviewed by Mr. Johnson previously. He helped put this together. The only changes that we made were to the dates to make it reflective of this school year.
Okay. Ms. Knight?
Mr. Taylor,
Yes, ma'am.
what would you say percentage wise, how often do we have to utilize the health department when, like contracting or subcontracting nursing services?
Ms. Knight, I'll be honest with you. I don't know that I can answer that question. This is the agreement where the county and or the state is providing some funding for us, and it runs through the health department. So that is more of what this is. Dr. Rice, you may be able, since I've only been here 1 year, you may be able to answer that question better than I can at this point.
In my 4 years, we've not utilized their nursing services. Again, as he said, this is the school nurse funding initiative, which provides funding for 3 school nurses. This is a continuing service that this agreement gives us three of our nurses we would not have without this agreement.
Yes, sir. Thank you. That's all.
You're
Ms.
welcome.
Bassett?
Thank you.
How many nurses do we have at this point?
We currently have 5, Ms. Messick.
Oh, that is great. Then this funding from the state has really helped us.
That is correct. Yes, ma'am. And of course, we would love more, but the funding we have right now provides for 5.
Is this yearly funding, have to apply for it every year, or they give it every year?
I don't know that there's an application process per se. It's based on need. It's based on the fact that we're in a northwestern North Carolina. It plays into that as well. Dr. Rice, anything else you'd like to add to that?
No, sir, that's a good summary.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Taylor.
You're welcome.
Ms. Tedder?
So we only have 5 nurses for our 19 schools.
That is correct. And they are, much like our social workers, they are assigned to particular locations, and they are on a rotating schedule, if you will. And that's That's tough in a good year. It's really going to create some interesting situations as we start out this year. But I will tell you, as I said earlier, we are meeting with them this week. Our nurses they do a great job. They're very knowledgeable, very hardworking individuals, and I am confident that they will do whatever they need to do to serve our young people.
Oh, no doubt. And I knew the answer to that question. Last year's agreement, Fred, the contract looked a little different because we had the names of those nurses that was in the contract. So you've looked over this one and everything looks good with you on this contract?
Yes, ma'am, I have.
Okay. And then has there been any talk, Dr. Rice, I know you serve on multiple other committees within the county, including probably one regarding or on DHH or Department of Health. Has there been any discussion about any kind of emergency funding for additional nursing services? Any possibility of that?
To be honest, I have not heard of any. I do know that there has been some talk of legislation to increase nursing services for this school year, maybe only at a one-year term, but there has been some discussion on that, but there have not been any votes to my knowledge. But there's not been anything locally either to my knowledge.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it, Ms. Tatter?
Yes, sir.
All right, discussion of budget amendment.
Okay, this is your budget amendment for the 1920. We received some additional revenue from Medicaid that we were not anticipating to come in before July 1 of the $18,405.54. That's for our fee-for-service program, for our special needs program. So actually, there's no increase because we had appropriated some of the Fund 8 fund balance for to offset Medicaid. So it's a wash in, wash out, but it's just to reflect a change in revenue source.
Okay, do you need us to vote on that tonight?
If so, I mean, I can go either way. We have auditors trying to finalize our audit probably the 1st of August. So I can, either way you need to do, that's fine with me.
What do you need? What makes your life easier?
Well, it'll be easier if you can approve it, but I hate to ask you to do that because we could go ahead and get the final copy to our auditors.
Mr. Rogers, I'll make a motion that we move this to action.
Okay, do I have a second? That was Ms. Tatter.
I second it.
Don't get mad at me. You seconded Ms. Messick. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All the Ms. Knight, how do you vote? Ms. Messick?
Aye.
All right, Ms. Tatter?
Aye.
All right, it's moved to action. It will be G, budget amendment. Okay, moving on to action, approval of Speed Center Incorporated contract. Do we have any discussion? Ms. Knight?
No, sir. I know we reviewed this last time. No further questions.
Right. Okay. Ms. Messick?
No, I've read it, so no further discussion from me. Thank you.
I mean, everything on action was discussed in the work session. So, Ms. Tatter?
Really, just the only question, and it's probably, is there any room, Fred, that these services can be, that these contractors can go to the homes if it's under a Plan C? And maybe this is all wrapped up with the EC unknowns at this time.
Right, they are. everything on this is unknown. That very well may be a possibility. We'll just have to address that as needed.
Okay, that's all I had. There,
All right.
Mr. Rogers.
Take a motion to approve.
I make a motion to approve.
Thank you, Ms. Messick. Do I have a second?
Katie Tedder, I'll second that motion for action item A.
All right, thank you. Ms. Snyder, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Messick?
Aye.
Ms. Tedder?
Aye.
So moved, unanimous. Carolina Occupational Therapy Contract. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion to approve action item B, contract for occupational therapy services, Katie Tedder.
All right, do I have a second?
I'll second that, Cheryl Knight.
All right, Ms. Knight, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Messick?
Aye.
Ms. Tedder?
Aye.
All right, so moved. Communication services for the deaf and hard of hearing. Do I have a motion to approve?
Katie Tedder, I'll make a motion that we approve the contract for the communication
Do I have a
services for the
second?
deaf and hearing.
I second that, Pat Messick.
Oh, thank you, Ms. Messick. Thank you, Ms. Tedder. Ms. Knight, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Messick?
Aye.
Ms. Tedder?
Aye.
So moved. Approval of Bayada Home Health Care Incorporated as discussed. Make a
Mr.
motion to
Rogers,
approve.
I do have a question about this one, Mr.
Okay.
Rogers. Even under our Plan C, are we utilizing this contract, Ms. Collins?
We would not normally when the student is at home.
Okay, I was just unclear on that part. Thank you.
Ms. Knight, are you making a motion to approve? Or you're shuffling?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm shuffling. So the student would be just receiving services on the days they are assigned to be at school?
That's correct.
Okay. But if we totally went per the governor to Plan C, is that something that could be discussed with Bayada? I mean, I'm sure they're familiar with in-home services, or, can that be discussed with the family, the student?
Yes, we could discuss it. Yes.
Mr. Johnson, is that something we still need to, move forward with this now, but keep in mind how things could change, just so this
Right,
service continues for the student?
the contract is in effect if the child doesn't attend school or is transported to a public school. So we do need to if we decide that we want to stay with Plan C throughout the year, we would need to enter into another contract if we're going to use the services.
Because, I mean, ultimately, we want the student to receive the service, and two, to not be, held to a contract that wouldn't properly serve them if we did go to C. So we can always revisit and form another contract if the situation changed.
Right.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Rogers, it's a little bit hard to hear you. I mean, Mr. Johnson.
I'm sorry.
It's a little bit hard to hear you.
Okay.
Yeah, I was getting ready to say I wasn't speaking.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Well, I
Do I
think,
have a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve the Beata nurses
Thank you, Ms.
contract.
Thank you, Ms. Messick. Do I have a second?
I'll second Cheryl Knight.
And so how do you vote, Ms. Knight? Ms. Messick? Ms. Tedder?
Aye.
It's unanimous. Approval of lottery application for Nancy Reynolds Elementary School. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, we approve that, Mr. Rogers.
That's Katie Tedder. And do I have a
Yes, sir.
second?
I second Pat Messick. But I would like to ask a question to Mrs. Moore.
Okay.
Mrs. Moore, every year we pay $450,000 from our lottery money, you know, that we would ordinarily receive for the debt services of Nancy Reynolds, and it doesn't expire to 2029, 2030. Is there ever a time when you could, does it always have to be this amount?
The reason they've reflected the amount that they have is an estimate of what they think that we will have available through the lottery funding for that school year. So that's why they're using that particular amount of money.
And is that the amount that they always take out?
If enough funding is available, that is the amount that will come out from the lottery funding. Sometimes they have to wait. It might not be enough each quarter, and they have to wait a little longer for it to build up to get that much. But that is based on what the county has put in their funding module.
So is that the majority of our lottery funds that we get from the state each year?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's the majority of our money goes to paying off debt services, correct?
That is correct, and we're not using the lottery for anything else at this time.
Okay. Thank you so much.
And that is a huge, that's something that the public is very confused about. So thank you for asking the question that way, Ms.
That's why I ask it, because a lot of people see the lottery funded and they see where all the money is supposed to go to. But the public, I feel, needs to know that our lottery funding is going to pay debt services. And
Right.
This particular one goes to 2029, 2030 before we will receive, you know, any of our lottery funds.
Right.
Just information.
Okay. All right. I have a motion. I have a second. Ms. Knight, how do you vote? Ms. Messick? Ms. Tedder?
Aye.
And it's unanimous, Pam. Approval of I-ready contract. For our discussion in the work session, do we have a motion to approve?
I have a comment, Mr. Rogers.
You have what?
A comment or a concern, that's all. And I'm sure
Okay.
Mr. Rose is on top of this. Just, you know, comparing teacher satisfaction with this program that's being used, as well as keeping accountability with student benefit and growth from this. I know it's a lot of money invested in such, and I know in so many ways the state requires this of us. You know, but just staying on that and maybe getting an update in 6 months or a year of, you know, the growth and benefit from such a program. And such a tool that, you know, teachers and students are able to use and benefit from, okay?
Okay. I'll be glad to get an update for the board.
Thank you.
Okay. With that clarification, do we have a motion?
I make a motion to approve the I-ready.
All right. Do I have a second?
I'll second that, Mr. Rogers, Cheryl Knight.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Knight. I have a motion. I have a second. Ms. Knight, how do you vote? Ms. Messick? Ms. Tedder?
Aye.
All right, it's unanimous again. Budget amendment moved from discussion. Do I have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion, Cheryl Knight, to approve the budget amendment.
Thank you, Ms. Knight.
Katie Tedder, second.
Oh, you're quick. Thank you, Ms. Tedder. Ms. Knight, how do you vote? Ms. Messick, how do you vote? Ms. Tedder, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, unanimous again. Announcements, information announcements.
Board members, once again, and I do apologize, but a lot of what you have in this portion of your packets has changed. For example, the first two pieces that has changed. Your board meetings do remain the same, August the 3rd and August the 17th. Both your work session and your regular session are scheduled for 6 p.m. The retiree reception as of now is still on, still scheduled for September the 21st, but we will notify you if that changes. You also have in your packet some requests for fundraising. I won't read those to you, but you can see those listed out. So we're not doing field trips per se right now. Schools do continue to try to raise money to help with various programs and the school in general. Also have a gift that was given to Pine Hall Elementary School in the amount of $705 from Grace Baptist Church. I'd like to say thank you for their generous donation. Behind that, you have several information sheets on Gov Deals, items that we have placed on Gov Deals for sale. I won't go through those individually. You can look at those. It ranges from vans to a van to some vacuum cleaners to a couple of lawnmowers. You can look through that. If you have any questions, I will entertain those. And then at the end, or next, I should say, you have 6 contracts that are for your information. They are ranging from an MOU between school system and Wavetti, the partnership between the school district and Wavetti for the pre-K at London. And then you have 1, 2, 3 parent transportation agreements for special education students, 2 at West Stokes, 1 at South Stokes. And then at the end, you have the vocational rehabilitation services contract. And those are for your information. And finally, we, as always, give you a calendar or 2 calendars. But as you know, after the announcement has been made, these now need to be updated, and we will share, make sure that we post the updated calendar and share that with our stakeholders.
Question about information items, Mr. Rogers.
Okay.
Just the MOUs with Wavetti, the Head Start programs, are they still scheduled to go on? How are they being run? Are they on a
To be honest
schedule
with
like
you,
they've always been, or yeah?
well, now that we've made our decision, we have reached out to some of our partners, and we are trying to determine if their schedule will change and how so. Ms. Collins, could you speak to that? Do you have any more up-to-date information regarding their schedules?
They will follow our schedule that we decide on in the public schools.
Okay. And that was my experience in other districts. So we can amend these to reflect our dates.
Okay.
Any other questions about your information?
We're good.
That's all that I have, Mr. Rogers. Thank you.
Okay, and we'll cover next board meeting. Mr. Johnson, I think it's time for you to give us a speech.
Yes, sir. We need a motion under General Statutes 143, 318.11, subsections A1, A3, and A6 to consider matters required by state or federal law to be discussed in confidence, for discussions with the board's attorney to preserve the attorney-client privilege, and to consider the qualifications or performance of a prospective or current employee of the Board of Education.
Okay, with that being said, ever so eloquently, do I have a motion to go into closed?
I make a motion to go into close. Pat Messick.
Thank you, Ms. Messick. Do I have a second?
My second, Cheryl Knight.
All right, Ms. Knight, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Messick, how do you vote?
Aye.
Ms. Tedder, how do you vote?
Aye.
All right, we're officially enclosed. I want to thank everybody for coming out and spending the evening with us. I know it is a trying time. It is a ever-changing time, and we appreciate your active involvement in Stokes County Schools.
Do we need to call in on a different number or stay where we are?
Ms. Barker?